Hello and welcome to the next tutorial, and this one is reasonably short, I hope, and all about colour. Now, the first thing to say about your TV ident is that it will probably be more likely to be displayed over a dark background than over a white background. Of course, we've set up this document as a print document, but it makes more sense really for us to get a sense of what the ident will look like over a darker background. If you think back to the examples that we've looked at in class, most of the idents are displayed over an image from the series, and the kind of default background colour on TV screens tends to be black rather than white. So in order to get a good sense of the colour for our ident, what I recommend that you do is start with a black background. So in my document, I've taken one of your ideas for a TV show title, and if we look in the layers panel down here, we can see that there's one layer, and in that layer there's only one object, supply and demand, and it's a text object. In other words, it has an underline, so it means it can still be edited if I wanted to do that, just like a word processor. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give myself a dark background. So I've gone to the rectangle tool. I have the colour black selected with no outline. I'm going to go up to the top corner here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle that's the same size as the artboard, like that. You can see now in the layer there are two objects. There is the black rectangle, and it's above the ident, the title. So I'm going to drag this to the back, like that. And the next thing I'm going to do is lock that object. So there's a little option to click on a padlock here. So this is locked, which means that it's now locked in place and it can't be accidentally moved or nudged. And of course the title that I did put there is still there, but we can't see it because it's black on black. So I'm going to select that with the selection tool, and we will choose the colour white. So we now have our ident in white. Let's have a little talk about colour. Colour, of course, is hugely important in the world of graphic design, and graphic designers agonise, I know I do, agonise about which colours to use. Generally, the advice is to keep colours minimal, or not go overboard with colour. But of course, that really depends on the content of your show. Colours can be accessed, so by selecting this object and clicking up here, these are swatches. Swatches are kind of preset colours that you can turn to. Of course, we do have the option to choose any colour capable of being displayed within RGB, but a good place to start is swatches, because these are kind of preset colours that you are likely to want to use. So popular colours for idents might be red. There's quite a lot of yellow ones. And so have a think about the content of your show and choose a colour. That's at the most basic. But what you may have seen in some of the examples we've looked at in class is that gradients are often used in idents. A gradient is just a blend from one colour to another. So I'm going to show you how to apply a gradient to your text. Now, as I said at the start, this text is still editable, so I could, if I wanted to, double click and edit the text like that. But in order to do most of the things that we'll look at in terms of techniques, you will need to convert the text that you've created to a vector. Now, another really good tip, I think I've mentioned it in a previous video, is if you are starting to experiment with things like gradients or special effects, what I really strongly recommend that you do is take a copy of your text. So I'm going to copy and paste, and just pop one of them off at the side somewhere. The reason why I've done that is because it's useful to have an editable version of the text that we can go back to if we kind of mess up the version that we're working on at the moment. So I've just put one off at the side as a kind of insurance policy against creating something that I'm not happy with and I want to go back and make changes. So I've got my editable text here. The next thing I'm going to do is right click on it and choose Create Outlines. And so, as I've said previously, this will give us the vector object of those letters. It's no longer editable, so I couldn't go back to the text tool and change it. These have become vector objects. Having done that, and with the object still selected, by default Illustrator will group together a block of text when you do convert it to outlines. So these are all grouped objects. In the layers panel, it looks like this. We can see it's in a group, and we've got all the separate letters are their own object, but I'm happy for them to stay in a group as it stands. And the next thing I'm going to do is go to the object menu and make these into what's called a compound path. What that means is that a compound path is essentially creates a single, what Illustrator regards as a single vector object out of a group of separate ones. So this is now, as far as Illustrator is concerned, one object, and that gives us some options for gradients. It also, when you do that, it also removes any color or fill or outline that you may have had selected. So you can see down here, there is no fill and there is no outline. It's just the shapes themselves. So clicking on gradient, if I was to click on this to activate, you can see that I've now got a gradient going from white to black. I can change the direction of the gradient if I wanted it to go from to 90 degrees, which means the gradient's going from the bottom to the top. The opposite of that would be minus 90 degrees. Sorry, not selected. The opposite of that would be minus 90 degrees. So we can have a kind of almost as if the text is being lit from the top, which is a very nice effect. So you have the option to create all kinds of different, you also have there is an option for a radial gradient, so starting from the center and working outwards, which is quite nice, especially in one like this where we have this plus sign in the middle of the ident. And of course, because we're fading out to black, it means that the D and the S and the U and the N are not readable. So what I could do over here, where it's showing us the makeup of the gradient, double click on the black and choose something not quite as black, so like a dark grey, maybe this one would work to make the effect more subtle, and that works quite well. So, so those are the options in terms of basics for colours, solid colours and gradients. So choose your colour wisely, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll be talking about some more advanced things that we can do with text.